Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by Fireheart Pictures and viewers like you. Thank you. Have you ever wondered why fear is so debilitating? What if I challenge you to look at fear differently? Maybe even love it. Tonight, our guest is going to show us how we can use fear to help us achieve our goals by taking action. I'm so happy you're joining us.
From Los Angeles, this is KLCS PBS. Welcome to Everybody with Angela Williamson, an innovation, arts, education, and public affairs program. Everybody with Angela Williamson is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
I don't think he would have written the success principles. He wouldn't have gotten that done.
Well, one of the principles of success that I teach is you got to let go of the good to embrace the great. And so what happens, one of the greatest obstacles to success is success. Meaning you got something working, but to get to the next level, you have to let go of this. And it's hard to let go of something that's producing a lot of money, a lot of fame and fortune, a lot of celebrity status, a lot of speaking requests. I mean, everything was working in terms of the outer world looking at it. But I woke up one morning and it just wasn't doing it for me anymore. It's like you'd give me a story about a one-legged man climbing Mount Everest, which should be really inspiring. And I go, oh, not another story about a one-legged man climbing Mount Everest. When's this going to stop?
And we sat down together and talked about, it was sort of time to take everything we had used to build this billion-dollar brand and share it with the world.
And it took about a year to find the new thing, the success principles. Hetty Aubrey said, you need to write a book about success, the success principles. And at first I didn't think I knew enough. I didn't know if I was going to do it or not. What do I have to say? Is it really that meaningful? It's all been said before. You know, all the doubts and considerations that come up. But she prevailed, and I wrote it. It took about 18 months to write it. It was my whole, everything I'd learned in life about my success and everyone else's.
We joke around here that it's the big white book. It's sort of the Bible of success. It really is the fundamental principles that if you follow them, they work.
Thank you so much for being here and helping to kick off the third season in your beautiful home in Santa Barbara.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure.
Well, I thought it would be great to start off our conversation with the success principles. I love that at the heart of everything that you're doing is education. I see you as an educator. So I wanted to spend our time together just being the educator. And
okay.
So my first question is when you started the success principles, why did you think it was needed for the universe at that moment?
Well, first of all, I want to respond to the thing about teacher. I started my career as a high school teacher in Chicago. So it was really, I was teaching history. It was an all-black school. Started teaching African-American history because no one was doing that. And then I realized my kids needed self-esteem even more than they needed to know anything else. So that was really what began all of the success principles. These kids needed to know how to be successful. Their parents weren't particularly successful because a lot of them were in a ghettoized situation. And I was fortunate enough to meet a man named W. Clement Stone who was worth about $500 million back in the 1970s. So he taught me a lot that I didn't know. I began to bring that to my classroom. I ended up getting elected Teacher of the Year by the students, which was really exciting, first-year teacher. But the reality is that I wrote the book, The Success Principles, because most people don't know how to be successful. In other words, there is a science of success that's not taught in our schools, it's not taught in our universities. You have to go either to a ballroom in a hotel and take a seminar with me or Tony Robbins or someone like that, or you have to read a book, watch some TED Talks, and kind of amass that information. And I thought if I could put everything I knew up until that point, the key principles, in one book, so that if you only read one book and that's all you ever read, you'd be able to be successful. And so it took me about 25 years to amass the information, took me about 2 years to write the book. And then there's 63 principles in the first version, now there's 67 in the 10th anniversary version. And I'll tell you why it made a difference. The first book had stories by, I always have stories about people. The principles have to be illustrated, so you go, these work. So I have people like Steve Jobs and all these different celebrities and athletes and people and people go, well, that's easy for them. They got a different DNA than I have. So the second time we did the book, almost all the stories are people who read the first book, applied the principle, and now that shows how the principle worked in their life, so you can relate to the fact that this person started out as a teacher or a plumber or they were homeless or whatever, and they still became successful because the principles worked.
Well, I'm reading the 10th edition, and so that's why those stories that you use to give examples to how to put these principles into practice, I think are very important. But I learned something new that I thought, in all my research, I always heard that you were a high school teacher and you taught in Chicago, but I didn't know like the area that you taught that in.
The South Side.
I was thinking when you said that it had to be the South Side of Chicago. As an educator, and I just see you as an educator because with every principal I was listening to, I was just thinking, you're educating me. But as an educator, because a lot of people are going to be watching this LA Unified School District, sometimes we don't realize that we have to change the way we teach reading, writing, and arithmetic. And in the case with you, it seemed that once you started to address those issues with your students, they started to change. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, I think that we have to teach children, not a subject. And that's the first thing. There's a human being sitting in front of us. And if they don't believe in themselves, if they don't think they can learn, if they think they're stupid, if they have low self-esteem, low self-confidence, they're afraid of rejection, they're afraid of making a mistake, they think they're not smart. Research shows by about the 5th grade, kids have decided if they're smart or stupid. They've decided if they're athletic or not, if they're attractive or not. And so basically, if we don't address those issues and help them feel connected and feel wanted and liked and part of the group and all those layers of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what happens is they're not able to attend to the things we want them to attend to, which is learning math and social studies and science and all this good stuff. So I was fortunate enough to be able to take maybe 5 to 10 minutes of each class and integrate some of these exercises, like find a partner. Talk about what's a challenge in your life. Talk about something you love. Talk about your favorite TV show. Talk about a fear you have, whatever. Every day, something new, a different person. So by the end of like 30, 40 days, kids had interacted with everyone in my class. Whereas some schools, you go in, you got the jocks sitting here, you got the bright kids here, you got the gang members here, you got the goths over here, all the different groups, and they don't interact with each other, and then they feel isolated. And so it's really important for kids to realize I'm lovable and I'm capable and significant. And those are the 3 aspects of self-esteem. Like, for instance, if I was if elementary school teacher, I would have a rule: no one can throw a birthday party and invite kids from his class unless they're all invited. Because what happens is some kids don't get invited, then they feel like they're not okay. So, I mean, you have to start thinking about those kinds of things.
I want to transition a little bit. We talked about students, but I want to transition because adults they're just as important, because you mentioned that you realized that the students really didn't have those kind of role models.
Right.
And you do something really successful. You actually train people to be those role models. Why do you think that's so important? Because you created an entire series out of that.
Well, I think that basically, kids need to know that something's impossible. And, if you're comparing yourself to only the people you see on TV, you're usually going to come up short, because, and then now we have social media, everyone does all the photoshops on themselves before they even become, on TikTok or wherever they go. So the reality is that we need to see adults who are successful, who share their feelings, who are honest and open, who are passionate about what they do. A lot of teachers are not that passionate about teaching. They just stay there because they don't know where to go or whatever. And so I think you have to be, one of my friends once said, the problem with education is you used to study with masters. You want to be a painter, you study with a master painter. You worked in their workshop. You want to be a sculptor, you want to be an engineer, you want to build churches, maybe a farmer, whatever it was. Then when we made public education for everybody, there weren't enough masters to go around. So if you're not a person who loves poetry and you're teaching poetry in an English class, kids know that. So are you passionate about your subject? Are you passionate about life? Do you believe your students can grow up to do anything they want to? A lot of teachers, I was working in Arkansas once, And these teachers said to me when I first came in, "You're teaching these kids lies. They can't grow up to do anything they want. They'll be lucky if they get a little farm. If they work, their dad gives them 10 acres at a farm. You know, you're lying to them. You're going to create frustration in their life." That's what the teachers believed. So the reality is, if you believe that, you're communicating that to your students. So if you believe you can do anything, and you love yourself, and you think you're a great person, and you have high self-esteem, you're managing that to the you're manifesting that to the kids. Yes. There was a quote I saw in an old teacher magazine once. It said, "Teacher, who you are speaks so loudly I can't hear a word you're saying." So if you're an angry person and you're telling everyone they should be kind, if you're standing up there smoking a cigarette telling they shouldn't do it, they're going to do it. You know. So you have to become, we say, the product of the product. You have to be walking the talk. You have to be exhibiting what you're asking your kids to grow up and be.
Okay, so when we come back, you just said you have to be walking you have to be walking the walk, right?
Right.
And talking the talk. I love it. One of the biggest, I say it's debilitating, that a lot of people that struggle to try to get to their success is fear. Mm-hmm. And I love what you say about fear and how to use it, and that we need to act now. I would love to, when we come back, to talk about some of those principles.
Sure.
To help our audience move to their next level.
Okay.
No 2 days are alike. So every day, you prepare. For yourself, for those you love, for whatever the day may bring. Being prepared is a part of who you are. But in the case of a disaster, preparation isn't always front of mind. In an emergency, when help and resources may not be available for days, being prepared is more important than ever. It's up to everyone to be informed about what types of emergencies might occur where you live or visit. Knowing the best responses for your personal circumstances is the key to maintaining your health, safety, and independence. Make a plan that covers where you'll go in an emergency and how a personal support network can assist you. Build a kit that contains the specific things you need to survive for several days: food and water, medication and supplies, as well as any important documents you may need. Being prepared is a part of who you are, and disaster preparation is no different. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Be informed, make a plan, build a kit, get involved. ready.gov/myplan.
145 over 92.
180 over 111.
I had a heart attack and a cardiac arrest and then a stroke.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Lowering your high blood pressure could save you from a heart attack or stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
Now I'm, trying to get better, stronger than ever.
Welcome back. I'm going to continue my conversation with Jack, and we are going to learn how to move from fear and take action. Thank you so much for that wonderful first segment. I think it's so important for educators. But one of the things I would like to talk about is, fear. I mentioned that in my teaser. It's so debilitating. But fear is we can use that to help us get to the next level. And I love how you say take action. So what did you find out about fear, and why did you think it's time to change our perspective about it?
Well, my thing about fear has changed over the years. It's evolved. So first it was called feel the fear and do it anyway. You know, like if you go to Tony Robbins and you do a fire walk, you're going to be afraid. I was afraid. I did it. And, but it was called I Did It Anyway. So anytime you do something and survive the risk, your self-confidence builds. So the first time I taught school, first day I was scared, but I survived it. Second day, I survived that. After a couple of weeks, I'm pretty good at this, you know. So you have to be willing to do the thing you're afraid of. That was kind of my old model. Now we know that all fear is self-created. You've seen the acronym, fantasized experiences appearing real. Okay. So I have to go into the future. Even if there was a snake crawling toward us right now, you'd have to go into the future and imagine the snake biting you in order to be afraid. Because right now there's just a snake moving around on the floor. So fear is, I imagine I'm going to lose my mortgage, I'm going to get disbarred, I'm going to be rejected, I'm going to ask that woman out for a date, she's going to say no, you know, my kids aren't going to learn, I'm going to lose my job, but that's all in the future. So if we can stop that and say, okay, what do I want to have? You know, not what if that happens, but what if it works out well? What would that look like? Now I visualize that. Because fear is just you visualizing something in the future and then your body responds. I could have you close your eyes, as I do to many people. Imagine standing on the edge of a skyscraper terrace with no railing, looking down, and you would start to have some physical reaction. Everybody does. Why? The body can't tell the difference between a visualized event and a real event. So when you're imagining bad things, they're going to take my car back, I'm going to get arrested, you know, whatever it is, then you are going to experience physiological fear, and it's going to feel real because you're feeling it. It feels real. You say fear is real, but it's created by yourself. So we can stop creating the fear. The third thing I've learned is you can be in the present moment. In the present moment, everything's fine. There's a roof over my head, there's food in my refrigerator. I can be afraid I'm not going to be able to pay the rent because of COVID or whatever, but that's in the future. So come present, what's happening now? Lastly, there's something called tapping, which we won't go into in depth, but you can literally learn to tap on 9 acupuncture points in your body while you think of the thing you're afraid of, and literally within 5 minutes or less, it literally disappears from your body. And it doesn't come back in most cases. So it's called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. It's called tapping. I encourage all of you to check it out. You can go to YouTube and just type in tapping or EFT tapping. And there's hundreds of people teaching you how to do it. And you should be teaching our kids to do this in the classroom. They're about to take a test. They get test anxiety, or whatever it's the GREs or whatever it might be. The reality is we can disappear that.
So what you're telling me is that we let fear control our lives because we're looking at it all differently.
Right. We don't understand it. And when we understand it, that we're creating it, we can either stop creating it or we can disappear it neurologically using these acupressure points by tapping on it. And there's a number of books out there. I wrote one called Tapping into Ultimate Success, where I teach you how to tap on any resistance that comes up on any of the success principles that are in my book, The Success Principles.
Wow. Well, a lot of times what happens, and I think about all of the successful people, and people just see their success, like you said. They don't see the steps they took to get to their success. So how do you teach people who say, for educators, parents, and maybe anything that you do, how do you teach people to say, okay, yes, you see the end goal here, there's steps to take in between there, just start. So how do you get them to just start?
Well, you've got to start with doing something that makes sense. So first of all, find out, Tony Robbins says success leaves clues. People have written books, they've done TED Talks, there's master classes on TV that you can watch. There's all kinds of things that tell you how to invest in real estate, how to be an online talk show host. I mean, they're all there, how to run a podcast, how to write a best-selling book. So find out what those steps are. I can interview someone, like I could go to you and say, hey, you're doing TV, tell me what you did. How did you do that? Take somebody to lunch, bring an expert into your class at school you're teaching, and let the kids interview them. So now they know what the steps are that people normally take. Now we have to say, okay, if this is where I want to be, where do I have to be a year from now, 6 months from now, 3 months from now, 2 months from now, tomorrow, what do I need to do first? I want to be a singer, maybe I should go buy a guitar, start taking guitar lessons, sign up for a voice, try out for the school play, whatever it is, there are some obvious steps. And if they're not obvious, find someone who's already done it. I was in a TV show once in Texas, and this woman who did my makeup, I said, what's your dream? And she said, oh, I want to own my own salon. And I said, oh, great, what are you doing to make that happen? She said, nothing. I said, that's a terrible strategy. It will not get you there. And then she said, well, I don't know what to do to own my own salon. I said, I have a radical idea. Go find a salon owner, they're everywhere in every mall, and ask her or him what they did. And she went, wow, what a good idea. It's there. You just have to be willing to reach out and get it. And then there's some obvious next step. And the next step may just be to read a book about it, to watch a YouTube video about it, whatever it might be. But there's so much information available. If you own a computer or a cell phone, you have access to everything.
And that's what I love about the 10th edition, because it brings in social media, it brings in the internet. But there's something you said in there too, is when you gave the advice to take someone to lunch, ask questions.
Yes.
Why are we afraid to ask?
We're all afraid of rejection. But again, let's go back to fear. That's in the future, hasn't happened yet. And a friend of mine wrote a book called Go for No. Said, don't set a goal to get yeses. Set the goal, I'm going to get 20 no's today. I'm going to ask 20 people. My goal is to get 20 no's. Now, invariably, when you get 20 no's, you get a yes along the way.
Yes.
But I don't get bummed out when I get a no. I go, great, got a no. This is good. I'm on my way to a yes, So the reality is, with Chicken Soup for the Soul, great book, made me able to have the home we're videoing this in today. That book was rejected by 144 publishers over the course of a year and a half before one publisher said yes. But it took one yes to change my life. And here's the deal. If you don't ask someone for a meeting, you already have a no. You're giving yourself a no. And if they say no, it didn't get worse. You still have a no. If I ask you to have dinner with me tonight and you say no, I didn't have anyone to eat dinner with before I asked you, I don't have anyone to eat dinner with after I asked you, my life did not get worse. It only gets worse if I go in, again, it's me, my responsibility, and go, nobody loves you, your mother was right, you chew with your mouth open, you're gonna die alone. All that kind of stuff we do to ourselves, but that's us. Ask, I have a chapter called Ask, 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 Ask. You have to ask a lot of people before someone will say yes, and that's okay. And if you're watching this, one of the clues is when they say no, follow-up question. What would it take? What would have to happen for you to say yes? What would have to happen for you to say yes? Well, I'd need to know more about you. I'd need to know you've done your homework. I'd need to know that you're not going to tell everyone in town. Whatever it is. Banks, they turned down a loan I wanted when I first started my business. What would have to happen for you to say yes? I'd need a better financial statement. Still got to know. What would have to happen? I need to know, what's your plan to repay this loan? So I went and got that. Then I got a yes. So a no doesn't mean it's no forever. It means no for now.
I love this principle, act as if. And there are so many great stories that you share in that principle. But I thought about, there are so many people now working remotely.
Yes.
And if you had to write like this one part of how can we use that in some of our remote meetings now, because I was thinking that would be wonderful to use in a classroom. A lot of us are still teaching online. And then my husband's like, that would be wonderful for him to use at his next business meeting. How do you think we could turn that around? Because first of all, we should probably tell the audience what that means.
Yes.
But I think that's something would be perfect for as we're coming out of this pandemic into a new year.
Well, it's funny, we're ending a challenge today we have online for our people, and the 5th day was Act As If. So I've been talking about it this morning.
Oh, good.
We had 12,000 people engaged in that challenge to want to take their life to the next level. And the last thing was Act As If. Act As If means that you don't wait until you have all the money, then you're going to act rich. You start acting abundant now. What would that mean? You'd be generous. Maybe you don't have to give a lot of money, you give away, but you're generous with your time. You're kind, you're compassionate. You're someone, maybe you tip the waiter an extra $1 because you just decide I'm going to be generous. My mentor sent me down to the Chicago Commodities Exchange to thank all the people coming out of the Commodities Exchange at the time. I was kind of like, oh, they're all capitalist pigs making too much money. And he said, they're modeling for you what's possible. So we had to go down as they came out and got in their limousines, I was in my 20s, and say, thank you for being a role model for how to be wealthy. I was so awkward and embarrassed, but the point was it got me over this sense of it's not okay to be wealthy. It's not okay to be, I've helped a lot of people to get here. So the reality is you act as if you're already there. I used to go to this Wells Fargo bank in Pacific Palisades when I lived down there, and one of the guys wore a little string tie. He never looked like he was really a banker. He was just this was his job. The other teller, he always had a suit on and a tie. A year later, he's sitting at one of those desks where the loan officer is. 3 years later, he's the branch manager. Why? He started acting as if he was a branch manager before he ever was one. So you have to start acting as if you are successful. You're going to get the date. You're going to get the job. You're worthy of it. people are going to like you. You act as if. You start with that assumption. How many times do people go into an interview going, I'm not going to get this job, I never get a job? Well, that comes across.
Yeah.
But if you act as if you're the right person, you act as if you're already there. So I don't know what your husband was referring to, but possibly we do this thing called a come as you'll be party, where we ask people to show up as if it's 5 years into the future and you've achieved all your goals. Yeah. So in a live thing, we actually do that. We'll be doing that here this coming Thursday night because I'm running a seminar. We'll end with a dinner here for about 24 people. And for the first 40 minutes, they'll have to act as if it's 5 years in the future and they've achieved every one of their goals. And what happens is the subconscious mind, just like you can't tell the difference when you're standing on a skyscraper when you're imagining it, you can't tell the difference when you're pretending to be something and when you're really being it. So they're going to have 40 minutes of being this new person. And so what you could do online is you can have your students each speak for a minute as if it's 5 years into the future and they've achieved every one of their goals. And they talk about it in the past tense. Yeah, and I got this job with the local TV station and I'm an assistant producer now, you know. And what happens is it actually activates the subconscious mind to come up with solutions and creative ideas to do it, as well as the self-esteem and the self-confidence that comes from that.
I love that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'm not going to be the only one that steals that idea.
Please, steal it, steal it. That's what it's for.
We are almost done with our time, and thank you so much for sharing so much with us.
Sure.
How can I make the next step to my future success? What advice would you give to that person asking that question?
Well, I'd say, first of all, what does future success look like? You know, you've got to, define where it is you want to be. Then you have to define what are the action steps that would get you there. We talked about how to determine that by asking people, studying, reading, whatever. And then you have to take those steps. I recommend you create an affirmation for your goal. I'm so happy and grateful. I'm now making $100,000 a year. I'm so happy and grateful. I've now got my own TV show. So happy and grateful my kids all passed 5th grade, whatever it might be. And then you close your eyes and visualize what you would be looking at out of your eyes if you saw that reality, if it was really happening. So you're in the studio, you know, you're now a guest on Good Morning America, whatever it is. You're visualizing that. And do that every day in the morning when you first wake up and right before you go to bed. That programs your subconscious mind. Then you're going to get, occasionally you're going to get what we call inspired ideas. Act on them. You know, I don't know why, but I think I should go to that Starbucks today instead of that one. I feel like I should call my sister. I don't know why. And you go to that Starbucks and you start talking to the person in front of you, and they're looking for a assistant producer for a TV show. You know, in other words, you never know. You got to trust it. We all know that eye in the sky camera that looks down on the road and says, you know, there's a traffic jam, go this way. There's an eye in the sky looking down called your high self. You could call it God, you could call it, you know, spirit, whatever it is, that knows what's best for you in any given moment. But most of us never access that because we don't listen to our inner guidance. We don't listen to those little inspirations in the shower, when we're putting on our makeup, what I call hands busy, mind free time, when you're driving to work, when you're walking on the beach, or when you're meditating, which we all need to do because then your mind slows down. You can hear that still small inner voice within.
Jack, thank you so much, not just for everything that you've done to change lives, but that you share this knowledge with others. You are definitely a light, and I appreciate your time in this interview.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. It was fun.
And thank you for joining us on Everybody with Angela Williamson. Viewers like you make this show possible. Follow us on social media to continue this conversation we just had. Thank you. Take care and stay well.